As I stated earlier, I'm going to be going over explainers as a type of feature because where feature number one, which was due last night, uh, was kind of, hey, any topic goes. Now we're going to be getting into the specific types of features. And so you can reference your syllabus to see what, the different types of features we'll be doing along the way are. But our first one is going to be an explainer feature. So today I'm going to go over what an explainer is, what the format looks like, and show us some examples so that you'll be prepared as we move forward with the explainer assignment. Now, of course, we've already covered explainers. These were within your chapter readings. So I do encourage you to go back through your textbook, read the section on explainers. It provides, some additional guidance, but here are kind of the things that I want us to think about too. So explainers are stories that tell your audience how to accomplish a certain task or goal. So a lot of these stories tend to be how to in nature. They tell your audience how to do something, or they go into the background of a particular case to explain something a little more in depth that you might not have known before. They tend to be very popular with readers in terms of the business of news because they are very relatable. It's things that we as readers want to know. So that's a key component of finding a explainer story is it needs to be something that your audience cares about, that they are particularly that they want knowledge about. If you're just doing a how to, that doesn't have any real tie to your community, then it's not going to be a very effective story. So finding a topic for an explainer is particularly important. How to stories also benefit from having a particular time peg, meaning like if you can find um, something to tie the story to in the world of current events, the better, right? So, a story prior to the Super Bowl about how to practice, safe COVID regulations while still celebrating the Super Bowl, or having a story, if we were doing a story this week about, how to keep Valentine's Day celebrations, safe during COVID, things like that. They can be more evergreen, meaning they don't have that time peg, but you really want to find some reason for doing the story. There needs to be a why. We don't just want how to's on just, anything, because then it's not news, it's more informational. So make sure that you're finding your news value within your evergreen. A lot of times, the ideas for an evergreen or an explainer story will come from a question on the minds of people in the community. So I know Caitlin just wrote a feature story on the renaming of our buildings, right? So having additional explainers about why this is important, what are the questions on? So in some ways, Caitlin's piece was an explainer story, although it also included reaction and kind of brought it more broad, so it's more of a news feature. But that element of explaining why this is a needed change in our community, that is important. So that would be an example of an explainer. But typically we're tying it to some question currently going on in the community that we as journalists can find the answer to. And we're providing readers with the information that they need during a particular time. And that's why having those time pegs are very helpful. And we want to make sure, again, that we're meeting the needs of the audience. That's really important in terms of thinking about good explain stories is what does my audience need right now and how can my story help with that? So when we're picking a topic, we want to specify our target audience. For us, writing for Falcon News, the online website for Montevallo, who is your target audience?
College students and the educated community.
Yeah, so we're talking about students. We can also be referring to faculty or staff, and maybe even stepping one side outside of that circle and seeing the city of Montevallo, maybe even one step further and seeing Shelby County. But past that, like our target audience, though, is really our students. That's our primary reader. We do have some alumni who read our website, but it is primarily students. And so we need to think about what's important to our readers, what's important to the student body at Well, who better to answer that question than our student journalist, right? What is important to the community. But we do often have to step outside of ourselves to say, okay, this is important to me, but why would anyone else care? And making sure that we do that check to make sure that we know that why it's important. It's also really important to narrow your topic. If you're just saying like how to protect yourself from COVID, like that's way too broad. You would have, a 100-page CDC document at that point, right? But if you're talking about um, how to protect yourself from COVID in the classroom, here are some additional steps you could take in the classroom. That's a little bit more narrow. It's a little bit easier to give a full array of information for that. So we really want to narrow our topic when we're thinking about what explainer story to do. We need to rely on sources to explain their processes and reactions for that topic. So we always want to find an expert that can help us explain what is really going on. You don't have to be an expert. You don't have to know the answer as a journalist. You just have to be able to cite the person who is an expert to say, this is what experts say you need to do. We need to introduce people who are using your topic or experiencing your topic. For example, if we were doing a story on how to start yoga practice to relieve COVID stress, right? My expert would be a yogi or a yoga instructor. But then I'd want to talk to someone who just recently started doing yoga for their personal health, right? To talk to them about what they experienced, how they're getting into it, what they feel about that. And then, I might also want to use a source of an everyday person, like, hey, do you do this? Why do you do this? Why do you not think yoga is good? Things like that. So you can see that you want to use a wide array of sources. Now, in terms of using sources and explainers, it goes back to what we want all sources to be for feature stories. We want emotional quotes. We want to reflect their experience with the topic, right? So again, we want to paraphrase facts and use our quotes to emphasize emotion, perspective, expert opinion. But let's look at these two examples. The first example is Pilates became a popular low impact alternative to yoga for fitness fanatics in the 2000s. And then the quote says, I dropped 2 pant sizes during the last year, yoga enthusiast Mandy Smith said. I do yoga about 4 times each week. Is that really emotional or is it fact-based?
Fact.
It's fact, right? So I could just as easily write as the journalist, yoga enthusiast Mandy Smith dropped 2 pant sizes from doing yoga 4 times each week. Instead, I want to write, her experience, as you can see down below, where I summarize the fact that she gives me in the interview and pull out the emotional aspect of her experience. It's such a wonderful way to relax and sweat at the same time. You don't feel like you're wearing yourself out, but the results speak for themselves. Can I, as a journalist, ever say what Mandy just said? No. Why? Why can't I say what Mandy said in the second quote?
It's not objective.
Yeah, it's an opinion and it's her experience. So honestly, no one except Mandy could say what Mandy said because it's what she experiences, it's what she feels. It's what makes her an important source to the story because it's from her, it's personal. So explainer stories really rely on these emotional quotes from sources, and it's really important that you distinguish quotes are reserved for those perspectives, the expert opinion, and the emotion of your sources, where your explainer facts need to be written by you as the journalist. So please be considerate of that as you're formatting your story. So, like I said, there are two different kinds of explainer stories. The first are really how to stories, where you're showing your audience how to do something. And the second is a background story, which gives more information and detail about why something's happening. So, let's look at a couple of examples of these. Here's exactly how to get your missed stimulus payments when you file your taxes, right? So, what's the topic here? What is the information that your audience needs to know?
Um,
Future stimulus payments.
yes,
Exactly.
and these kinds of stuff is very popular right now, very
Very
popular.
popular. Economic stories are always really important. Why? We all want money, right? And honestly, this has been very confusing, for a lot of people. And so providing the information on how to get this information is important. So, I will say that this is actually written by an expert as opposed to a journalist. So it makes it a little bit different that all of the writing here is done by a tax expert who is like moonlighting as a journalist essentially. But you can see that they rely on expertise here. But look at how personal the writing is too. Didn't get your stimulus check? You can claim your missing payment as part of your 2020 tax return. So you're really speaking here to a target audience. Now, if I got my stimulus check, I'm probably not going to read this story, right? Because it's not going to be helpful for me. But I still might to make sure that I got everything that I needed. I like how they pull out a pro tip in like a pull out quote here. I think that's very helpful. And then they show you what it looks like to file on 3 tax websites: Liberty Tax, Community Tax, TaxSlayer, uh, IRS e-file, and they actually take pictures and they show you what it's going to look like when I go in and file my taxes, how to claim a missed stimulus check, right? And so I like the visual aspect and the personal writing that we have here. It also relies on a lot of research. This person is a tax expert, they know what's going on, and they've gone into each of those 3 platforms and researched exactly what it looks like for the individual user. So that is a good explainer story. Here's another. Today is the final tax deadline for 2020. Here's how to file for free, right? We all like free. And you can see the good time peg here, right? Because today is the last day to file. So the tax file deadline is always a good time to write. Again, we have personal writing. If you've asked for an extension and haven't filed your taxes, the final deadline is today, right? And so again, we have, these good breakout headers where there is a question, and now I'm going to provide the expert answer. We have the pullouts of a pro tip. Look at how many hyperlinks we have to show people the different information. And so you can see that we have a lot of research, a lot of good explanation here. Here is another one. You don't have to do your stories on business topics. It just happened that these were the ones I found quickly. Okay, 10 steps to getting a business loan. All right, so now we're kind of giving an explainer story within a listicles format. You guys are going to do listicles later in the semester, but a listicle is just like where you list things, but here it's actually an explainer because it's giving you a how to of how to do something, right? But look at how much detail is given. I also like that they've bulleted information, but it makes sense in terms of AP style writing. You know, they're writing in full sentences, even in their bullets. They also have quotes from experts here. We can see that they are using bolded sections and things of that nature. So, um, those are some good examples of how to's. Here are some examples of background explainers. Here's one that was just recently done. And this wouldn't qualify necessarily for our requirements because you're required to use more than one source for ours. But this story uses an interview that they did with Alabama's EMA director to talk about why can FEMA not help with tornadoes? And this is actually a question that I've always had that I didn't know the answer to until I read or listened to this interview. And I thought that it was a nice breakout explainer feature from Alabama's 13. So what they should have done, though, in my opinion, take it for what it's worth, is they should have written in the digital copy what the actual explainer was. They should have written a full story as opposed to just saying in the video above. That's lazy broadcast digital writing, but it's okay. I understand. But you can see that they use the expert to explain a common question, and the time peg is the Fultondale tornadoes, right? If you've seen the Netflix show The Dig, it has a historical tie. So the Smithsonian actually went and did the history behind this event, right? And so we have this entertainment peg because The Dig is now like top 10 in the US on Netflix, whatever. And they go back and show the actual historical reference, the explainer of this. And so you can see they use experts, archaeologists, all of that. It's a very detailed story. But I like, all the hyperlinks. They include things from the actual show. And so very well done piece there by the Smithsonian. Okay. And then I thought this was really cool because I'm a super nerd. I'm not spoiling WandaVision for anyone. I have not seen it myself.
It's a
But
great show.
I'm
It's great.
so looking forward to it. But because I'm like working on my dissertation, I just haven't had the time to devote to it that I want. And so I haven't started it yet. But you know how like in superhero movies, they always have like this scientific thing that then creates the breakout that the superheroes then have to fix. Well, most of the times those things are fake, but WandaVision is actually using a real scientific issue. And so Sci-Fi Wire actually went in and talked about the significance um, of this issue that they're covering. And I thought it was really cool, to talk about the science behind an entertainment show and things like that. And so yeah, they go in and they do that. But I didn't want to read all of it because I was afraid of a spoiler. But you can see that they're providing background to something. And a lot of times we have questions about things like that, right? I remember seeing when Tiger King came out over the summer, one of the Alabama outlets were like, here are the laws about owning tigers in residential areas, and so that provides background to people. Another type of explainer is an inside look at something. And so a lot of times this is something that's very common, we see all the time, but you're providing people additional details and backgrounds. So here's a story that they did. It's actually a broadcast site, and they did a really good full broadcast story with it, but their broadcast piece is really well done. But they show what it's like to be in traffic enforcement during a pandemic, to show how they're coping and dealing with COVID regulations as a police department. So we know the fact, we know that they're having to do that, but now I'm getting an inside look through a ride along of what that actually looks like for officers. Same with a local vaccination site, right? Here's what it looks like, and here's what it's like to be a part of a mass vaccination site. And so, again, this relies on a lot of experts. It relies on you actually going and doing it, um, and things like that. And then I thought this was super cool, y'all, because I'm a nerd. But this Yahoo News story actually goes through and shows how Steinway, who makes like beautiful grand pianos, actually manufactures their things. And so they go into the manufacturing plant of Steinway. And it was a really, really beautiful piece. Um, but anyway, so we're dealing with the ads, and I apologize for that. So do you guys have any questions about what explainer stories are? Does that kind of cover for the most part? Okay. So you have a couple of different options as you're thinking about your story topics, right? You can do these how-to videos, you can do backgrounds, you can do inside looks, things like that. Now, the important part of explainers is just like if you've ever taken a public speaking course and you've had to like do a demonstration speech where you're like, here, I am the expert and I'm showing you what you're doing. A lot of times when I used to teach public speaking, kids were like, this is the easiest thing ever because I just have to show you how to do something I do all the time. The problem is in writing it, it actually requires a lot of knowledge. It requires you to really think through the steps and provide new information that people don't already know. And so that's going to make you have to rely on other sources of information. And that can be very challenging for writers to do. So, information sources can either be people based or they can be like actual document based, right? So, in terms of people, we're going to want to use experts. And the great thing about working on a university campus is you have a lot of experts, right? You have people who have spent their lives researching a particular topic. You have people who have so much professional experience as broadcasters, writers, people who do podcasts, even just within our department. Step outside of our department, you have people who have worked on Broadway, who have sung operettas, and all of, I mean, we have a million amazing faculty members. You just kind of have to look for those experts. And I don't include myself in there. That wasn't like bragging or anything, but we have lots of experts. We also have lots of users, students who are trying these things for the first time, people who can react to certain situations and certain things that are going on. So our people sources are really good. We just have to dig and research to find them. Now, the library is also a great place of information. If you have not been familiar with Carmichael Library or any of our library resources, you need to be because they're very helpful. But you need to find, once you pick your topic, you're going to need to find a bunch of different sources of information. And these can come from credible websites, such as those that have URLs that end in edu or .org. It's going to be tricky if you have a .com website, whether or not it's going to be considered a credible source. And it might be something that you want to shoot to me and say, hey, do you think that this is credible enough for my topic? And I can say yes or no. But most of the time, the most credible websites are going to end in edu or org, right? You can use scholarly journals. You can use other forms of media. You can use books. Those are these things that have pages and you flip them. It's really fun. I kid. But yes, you need to have actual sources of information that you can point to. So think of this as like journalistic research papers. That's kind of the fun part of an explainer, or at least I think so, because I'm a research nerd. And once we get all of these sources of information, we need to share them with our viewers and the way, or readers. And the way that we do that is through links, hyperlinks to these sources and to other stories that have been written about it. And then also through the use of quotes. So information sources are going to be an important aspect of the story. So in terms of what we're looking for as we continue with our explainer feature number 2, your pitch is due tomorrow at midnight, and then Wednesday's class, we're just going to talk about pitches, just like we did for feature 1. All 5 information sources that you're going to have and know by Thursday at midnight. On Friday, we're going to spend, wait, that doesn't make sense. Hold on one second. Oh no, Friday's, sorry. It's been a long weekend, y'all. I didn't mean to just y'all, by the way, that was really rude. Friday's class is going to be a writing workshop day, and then Monday's class is going to be an editing day. So your draft will be due on Sunday at midnight. Your peer edits will be due Monday at midnight, and then your final story is due on Tuesday. So this one goes quick, but it's mainly because you're relying on other sources of expertise as you're writing. Okay. So what questions do we have about explainer features? What can I help you guys with as you think about what you're going to pitch to me tomorrow?
So I have a question. I did a piece about COVID and its impact on the environment,
Mhm.
and I got like an expert. I think I got one of the professors at the environment or from the environment program in Montevallo. Would
Mhm.
that sort of be like an explainer?
So I think that that's actually just more of a feature, because here's the difference, right? Features and news stories in general all rely on some forms of expertise. But the idea of an
Mhm.
explainer is to answer a question that the audience has. Now, if
Okay.
you kind of flipped that piece and said, um, how to protect the environment while protecting yourself from COVID. And you
Okay.
talked about, like, using reusable masks, or when, can you recycle a mask? Things like that. And so it's really flipping your story to make it more personal to an audience member and answering
Mhm.
questions that an member might have that you and your experts can answer.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
To clarify, we are pitching our stories similar to how we did last time, correct?
Correct. So you will fill out on the on Canvas. Oop, no, don't want that. Sorry, y'all. Okay. My bad. Boo, boo, boo. It's been a day. All right. On our main page of the story assignment, or I'm sorry, on the homepage of Canva, you can see that I've filled out Monday through next Monday, and they're all ready for you. You can look over the full feature story number 2 and what the requirements are, including a rubric. In fact, I'll open that up and we'll look at that here in a second. But you have the pitch slot where you'll upload that, and it includes the pitch explainer document, which is going to look very similar, but it does actually have different questions. So make sure you're reading each of the section. They look the same, but it's not. So that's the pitch document you'll use, but I'm only using that as a backup, right? Because you're going to pitch me your stories in class on Wednesday. This is just so that if the thing that you pitch in class on Wednesday doesn't work out, or you need a backup story, you have all 3 pitches ready to go. And it also tells me that you're doing the research you need to for your pitches. After we do the pitch on Monday, you will turn in your 5 sources. I don't care how this gets turned in. You can put it in a Word document. You can type it in the text upload, whatever works best for you. You'll notice that this is just a check mark complete, so it goes towards your professional points. The draft works the exact same as last time. You'll upload the draft into Canvas, but email your draft to your peer. You'll notice you have different peer editors this time. So use the peer editing explainer for these. Okay. And then You will upload on Monday your peer edits, and by Tuesday, you'll do your final story. Okay. So yeah, let's look at the explainer. Just so you guys know, I always try to put these in so that as you're going, okay, does my story meet all the requirements? This is how I grade. So it gives you a typical word length, although that is not golden. You can go under or over. It's just to give you some assurance, making sure you're writing with an organizational style. You know, explainers do rely more heavily on bullets and lists. Just make sure they follow AP style. Make sure you're writing in full sentences. You still need a headline. You still need a lead. You still need a net graph. All the elements of a feature story all still remain. It's just a different type. We still need interactivity and visual elements for this. Please follow social distancing guidelines. You have to have 5 distinct sources, which again can be a mix of people and documents with a minimum of 2 people as interviews. This tells you your draft, your peer edits, and then the rubric. So if you haven't ever opened one of these documents, all of your feature articles have these documents in it, just FYI.